Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Hayla Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you for joining us today for our free webinar, Making Your Book Awesome, an expert talk with Dr. Kyle McCord. In this webinar, you'll learn how to craft a book readers can't put down, the publishing production process, and how to collaborate with Atmosphere to see that book from raw manuscript to well-designed beauty in the hands of your readers. You'll also have the opportunity to ask Dr. McCord your own questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And don't forget to check the Answered tab to see answers to questions that already have been posted. We want your author experience to be tailored to you so you can enjoy the process while you're creating the best possible version of your book. This is what we're all about here at Atmosphere. Founded in 2015 by Nick Courtwright, an author and PhD in literature, Atmosphere Press is the only publisher who puts rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. We've published more than 1,200 books. Our authors have won dozens of awards, and our books have reached the hands of tens of thousands of readers. Visit www.atmospherepress.com to learn more about how you can have a rewarding and meaningful author experience of your own, as well as to submit your manuscript for review. And if you mention this webinar in the first line of your cover letter, we will expedite the review process for your submission. With that, I'm so excited to introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Kyle McCord is the author of 8 books, including National Poetry Series finalist Magpies in the Valley of Oleanders and the novel Reunion of the Good Weather's Suicide Cult. He has work featured or forthcoming in AGNI, Blackbird, Boston Review, the Gettysburg Review, the Harvard Review, the Kenyon Review, Ploughshares, TriQuarterly, and elsewhere. He's received grants or awards from the Academy of American Poets, the Vermont Studio Center, and the Baltic Writing Residency. Kyle holds an MFA from University of Massachusetts Amherst and a PhD from the University of North Texas. He served as Associate Poetry Editor of The Nation and currently serves as Executive Editor of Goldwig Press and Acquisitions Director for Atmosphere Press. He's married to the visual artist Lydia McCord and lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Kyle, take it away.
Thank you so much, Hayla. And it's so wonderful to be here with you all. I appreciate you either whether you're watching this later or whether you're watching it now, taking the time to get a chance to hear what I have to offer about creating the best possible manuscript and finding the best possible home for it. I actually just got back from a conference in Austin where I got to hear all sorts of amazing pitches for manuscripts and learn a little bit about the authors who created them. One of the things we don't often get to see, though, is the process. How do we get to that point where we have an amazing manuscript? There's a few key things that I would recommend. In particular, first of all, a lot of this you're going to see documented in our Atmosphere blog. We actually made an ebook that is super helpful in terms of actually getting this work done, right? And believe me, it is indeed work for all the ways in which it is absolutely, a fun experience. There are 4 things I'm going to talk to you about in the actual creation process. And so ultimately, the first place you have to begin is just putting the words on the page, drafting. And when you're drafting, you want to make sure to think to yourself, this is a draft. This is not a final version of the book. If you get really hung up on the idea that the first version is the perfect version, first of all, you're doing something that would be exceedingly abnormal for most writers. All of us draft, we create, and those creations are rough to begin with. But you can always think to yourself, you know what? I'm going to fix this in post. Right? I'm going to have an editor. I am going to get, do further drafts of the text. I'm going to have beta readers. I'm going to get a chance to hear all of these voices, right? Once you've created a draft, you'll then start the revision process. One of the things I recommend with the revision process is make a list of things that you want to address within the text. Maybe there are places where you know you're a little weak as a writer. Maybe there are places where you really want to shine as a writer. Maybe it's something you've just read about and you're like, oh man, I found this concept I really like. I really want to bake this into my revision. So we start with drafting, we move to revision. Within revision, what we are going to do is we are going to say, okay, I'm going to pick one of those things and I'm going to read for it. I'm going to look for it as I work my way through. That'll help you laser focus on finding all the pieces you need to put together. Then you might think that this part comes earlier, but it actually comes later, which is part three. We're going to seek inspiration, which means we are going to read other texts that, perhaps are similar. Maybe we're going to go to an art museum where maybe we're going to watch movies. One of the things that I often do is I will have a series of books that I read and reread as I'm working my way through my own book. And I will say, idea that this person has, I'm going to find a way to bake that into this character, or I'm going to use this as a structure within my memoir. Okay. Fourthly, you want to ultimately create a timeline for yourself of goals, right? And so that final step, right, of creating the goals is part of the completed process once you've moved through all these things, because then you say, okay, these are the things I'm going to do from here, whether it's submission, whether that is, preparing the book for publication in these other ways. It's starting to educate yourself about what comes next. So again, those 4 steps, just to walk back through them, we're going to draft, we're going to revise, we're going to add flavor and inspiration, and then we are going to create a diligent map of where we are going to go from there. How do I want to submit the book? What are the markets that are out there? Where do I see other authors that I really admire being published? And we're going to use that to create a next step plan. So one of the things we might want to think about is what happens when you actually get to the production process. This is the second part of what I want to share with you. So we've talked a little bit about making an awesome manuscript. What happens when we actually get into production? There are a number of things that any publisher you work with should be doing. The first is what we would call editorial, developmental editorial. This means that you are going to be in direct conversation with an editor, and that editor should have read your manuscript completely. They should know it well. They should also be someone who is very engaged with their own genre and with the genre in which you're writing. So there's someone you need someone who's knowledgeable about the conventions of the work you're putting together. They should be offering you suggestions. In a traditional contract, you unfortunately have no choice, but basically to take those suggestions. With something like a hybrid press, you definitely do, right? And so that's something you really want to make sure of when you are working your way through the production processes, that you have an editor. And I would say that you really want to make sure that you have some flexibility in terms of the autonomy that you get regarding being able to accept or reject some of those changes. Um, you also are going to need a proofreader. This is going to be someone, not just your friend, not just someone who's good at, grammatical corrections, because anyone who you select for this position needs to be someone who's very experienced at this, because it's a specialized skill. You'll notice that that is true of a lot of these things we're talking about. You need someone with a specialized skill to proofread your book, to be able to say, oh, this is a comma splice, this is a run-on. Oh, here we're using a colon, but a dash might be more appropriate, or something like that again. And that is, means finding someone who ostensibly does that as their 9 to 5, right? You need a cover. Again, specialized you need a specialist, right? You need someone with specialized information of the genre, also someone who's a very gifted artist, right? Who is going to help bring not just your vision to life, but come up with a vision that perhaps you never could have imagined, right? You need someone to do interior design or a team to do interior design. It is an intensive process where you are going to want an expert who understands how to craft an interior that is memorable and engaging. Additionally, you are going to want a promotion team. The promotion team is something where you have a marketing pro who is going to first have a conversation with you about good reads or what sort of special, social media ad buys you want to see, right? You need someone who understands how to get reviews for the book, create visibility. All of that is critical. Okay. Um, so, what do we do now? Well, this is where I'd like to share with you actually can get all of this under one roof, right? You will be able with Atmosphere Press to actually not have to search around and find this person who does this, and this person who does this, and this person who does this. Atmosphere is a way to get all of those things all at once. You get top level developmental editorial, top level proofreading, top level cover design. You're going to have an interior designer who's going to know all of the conventions, and you get a full marketing team who can really bring your book to life. And we are actually, this one of the reasons we're hosting this is we're actually open for submissions right now. So if you have a book that you're really excited about, it's your chance to not have to either one, hang out on the market hoping that a traditional press that happens to have the right contract, that happens to be interested in your book, that happens to have the right specialization for you, which again requires a lot of research and insight, and often a very long timeline because you're looking at least 2 years to get that done, that you don't have to look down that road. You also don't have to look at buying all these folks on Fiverr or something like that, some system where you're not going to have somebody who brings this all together for you. And you also will need to, again, make sure that you have to vet everyone at every step of the process. I don't have that kind of expertise, so it's much better to have a full cohesive team who does this. Additionally, right, Atmosphere is a place where you are going to get editors and let's put it this way, you're going to get people who have won awards for their, who have produced the kinds of covers that have appeared in places like the LA Review of Books, Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, right? And where peer-reviewed journals have said this is work that really not just meets the criteria to be professionally considered, where readers have said, in fact, this is something we're really excited about. And so we would love to be really excited about your book. So that's a great opportunity for you to send in work for us to check out. And just like Hala said, you can actually get an expedited review for your book. Pretty exciting. Um, at any rate, I would love to hear a little bit about what kind of questions you all have about this process and how we make an amazing manuscript.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle. And that's a really great way to jump into our audience Q&A. So again, for anyone in the audience, if you have a question for Kyle about any part of the sort of manuscript development journey, please check out that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. There will also be answered questions in the answered tab, so check out those as well. But for now, I want to pose some questions to Kyle. This first one is kind of a big one, but this person says, how much of your manuscript has to be done before submitting it to Atmosphere? And at that point, how much editing help do authors then get if they're accepted? And finally, do authors then keep their rights at the end of the process?
And these are things that everyone should be asking about any sure that they your book does not have to be absolutely finished to work with the unique features of sphere. Um, if you if you have your idea put together in a editable manuscript where we can see even just the first 50 pages of it, if it's something like fiction, or maybe you can give us the first dozen poems. A lot of times that will give us a sense of what you're looking for, of what we're looking for, I should say. One of the things I often tell people is that it is rare to start eating a sandwich and halfway through go, I don't like this, right? We can get a taste just from those first few tastes. We'll often get a sense of whether a manuscript is a good fit for us. Additionally, we can offer you some, feedback in terms of what's going well, and then maybe that turns into a full-fledged relationship with a publisher. And how huge is that to have basically on tap a publisher who is interested in your work, who once the manuscript is complete, is going to be able to take on the project, right? Additionally, we let our authors keep three things. One, you keep your autonomy. That means, like I said, you don't have to take edits. You don't have to say, um, you don't have to, um, for example, if an editor says we want to cut this character, we want to add this scene, or we want to do this or that or the other, which often happens with traditional publishing, right? Instead, you get the opportunity to be the author that you set out to be, to write the book that you set out to. So you get to keep your autonomy. Secondly, you get to keep the rights to the book. That means you can reprint, you can excerpt, you can republish, right? Those are hugely important in case some other larger entity comes along and says, oh, we really love this book. We want to turn it into a screenplay that maybe we can develop into a larger series. Maybe we want to buy the rights from you to create X or Y or Z. Those choices should sit with you as the author, and when you work with Atmosphere, they do. Additionally, we strongly believe that an author should be the beneficiary of success. That means that you get 90% return. Now, one of the great things about that is Atmosphere still has some skin in the game. We've got the 10% that we get as your publisher. It means we have every incentive to make sure your book does incredibly well, right? Um, but that also means that you're seeing the rate of return that we believe is appropriate for you, and you can count on them. Again, so to go back to the original point of the question, really, um, if you are someone who is early in the process and you want to just start making a connection with us as your press, send things over, right? And that kind of encouragement a lot of times is going to help you get to the finish line, and know that your project, once it's done, isn't just going to be sitting in a box somewhere. It's going to be something. You're going to have a pipeline immediately to get that book into the hands of editors.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kyle. Another question for you. What should I do if I'm just totally stuck and I can't write more?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so a couple of things to think about. I have three ideas. The first is, um, when we think about more, a lot of times what we're considering is what comes next in the story. One of the things we could consider is what comes before. What are the poems we haven't put in yet that we need to write, right? Thinking about, or maybe you say, you know what, there's this character. I'm getting some feedback from readers that I really need to create some backstory for them. Cool, let's create a chapter that does that. And a lot of times that once you do that, it'll be like, oh, actually, I was missing this little cog in the machine that was going to help me move things forward to the finish line, right? And in doing so, that really can create that kind of momentum to finish the book. So don't think of everything as being writing forward. Sometimes we need to create those little cogs to move the machine along. Two, we could go to our beta readers, right? And find out where they want us to go next. Again, these are folks along the way who we've shared work, and they might say, I really liked blank about this. Let's get more of that. Let's get more. And in doing so, that can really strengthen the work and can help you move forward. Thirdly, if you haven't done it yet, create a general outline of where you want the work to go, right? That is going to be helpful because even when you derail from that, right? My outline that I started with for my novel that I published with Atmosphere about 3 years ago, I have when about halfway through, I was like, man, I'm going in a totally different direction with this. And then I revised it, right? And then it was like, okay, well, now I'm filling in these blanks, these things I know I need in order to complete the story. Right. And in doing that, a lot of times you'll create goals for yourself, and those kinds of goals can help make what might seem like an insurmountable, intangible task into something that is measurable and achievable. And that's what we're always going for as writers.
Yeah, I this kind of tangible advice that you're giving us, it's really helpful. So thank you again for these insights. New question for you. Should I try to get an agent or should I just try hybrid publishing?
You guys, I'm a little biased, but I'm biased in a way you might not expect, which is that I started my career in traditional publishing. This meant contests. This meant sending to literary journals. This meant the what I would describe as the long silence of of what came to feel like a lot of editors who were, let's put it this way, well-meaning and overworked, right? One of the challenges of traditional publishing is that a lot of times there is just, no matter how big an organization is, it's really one person who does the vast majority of the work, right? So there's four things I would think about, okay? The first is, how long are you willing to wait? Okay. And I don't mean just the 2 years of waiting until publisher can actually get your book out. There's also the finding the right agent, getting the right person, getting the right blank and blank and blank. For some people, I say this with, a great deal of sadness, it just never happens. You'll be sitting on a book for decades and decades and decades, right? And that is not necessarily a statement of value upon that book. Often a book is fabulous and there just isn't the right editor or audience for it. Okay. And so what you need is a committed publisher who can help you do that. Right. And again, that's one of the reasons I talk about Atmosphere. We publish such a range of books, and we have such a range of editors, and one of the things we can do is help build audiences that you would never expect, right? And again, that's part of having a vision as a publisher. Secondly, um, so the when we think about which one we're going to pick, we also want to think um, what, let's put it this way. If you're thinking about an agent, one of the things you should consider is what is your appetite for significant changes to the text, right? And not just changes, but changes that you don't control, right? If you say, you know what, I really do trust the process, and I think I found the right person, and this and that and the other. Okay, fair enough. But you're going to be dealing with a lot of people making choices along the way. That's one of the things I can tell you as someone on the inside of press, is that the interior designer makes choices, the cover designer makes choices, the editor makes choices. I think that personally, for me, I always wanted to be in the driver's seat. I'm not somebody who's good at just saying, I will accept your judgment, right? Because I have particular vision of the book that I want to create. Thirdly, um, I think that you want to consider the trajectory of the moment that we're living, right? Um, I think that people conceive of agents as being part of a long tradition. That's not exactly accurate. Shakespeare uh, paid to have his work published, right? Um, Yeats, his children, not children, sorry, his sisters actually published his books. It's really the agent idea is something that is relatively recent, and it represents a kind of middleman in writing that has had some virtues and lots of vices, right? So I think it's a matter of where you want to place yourself in terms of tradition. Hybrid publishing is really on the cutting edge of where things have been in the last few years. And specifically, I say very proudly, Atmosphere has been at the forefront of that. And then, fourthly, I would say that you want to consider ultimately, this sounds like a very general idea, but I have some very specific intentions in mind. What kind of writer you want to be, right? I think that it is very important to have control over how your book is marketed. What are the features and motifs that we want to highlight? And again, these are things that we really want to make sure we have some element of control over. That's why I went with hybrid publishing. It is, I really wanted those four things. I had particular answers to those questions that really were me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle. And while we're talking about the process of publishing with Atmosphere and, benefits of that, we'd love to hear from you. With Atmosphere, am I allowed to contribute my own cover art?
Yes. Let's put it this way. You absolutely, um, when you start the cover design process, what we're going to have you do is send us 10 or so images that are just going to give us a sense of your aesthetic preferences. Based on that, we have a design team of 6 different artists. And based on what you send in, we'll say, oh, we actually have this person who works really well on this. Um, what I will say is this: if you have a particular cover image in mind, will absolutely work with that, right? I also would be open to inspiration or open to what other possible varieties of that cover might look like. Because saying, oh, I have a cover is not the same as saying I have an image. Because what we want to do is think about how the text appears, what the text, and then what the features of the cover actually are. It's one thing to be able to say, well, this is how I imagine an image would look. It's another thing to do a full wrap around and design the spine and do all of these different things. But absolutely, again, you get autonomy at Atmosphere, so you get to say, this is really what I've always imagined. This is what I've dreamed about, and we want you to be able to come in with the confidence that that we are working with you, not not in a way where we are the people who have absolute final say over what you do. Again, we want to make sure that your book is the book that you've dreamed about.
Exactly. Yes, thank you. Another question, slightly different. Would Atmosphere Press work with authors from other countries, such as the UK or Australia?
Absolutely. And sometimes I talk to people who say, "Oh, well, I'm trying to find maybe a more localish press to me," right? And I can understand the virtues of that. But one of the things to say is that Atmosphere is an international publisher, right? We have authors in Australia, we have authors in the UK, we have authors all over the world, right? And our staff is from all over. We use what's called a print on demand process, where if someone orders your book in Perth, we print it in Perth, right? If somebody orders your book in Brisbane, we print it in Brisbane. If somebody orders your book in Aberdeen or anywhere on continental Europe or all sorts of different places, we will be able to deliver that book efficiently and with the maximum rate of return for you as the author. So absolutely, we would love to take a look at your manuscript. Again, as long as you are open to the possibility that you will be, printed internationally, that your book might receive acclaim in places that you never imagined. Again, we can help you develop those audiences. I think your book is for us. So let's take a look.
So, if someone does want to take the next step with their manuscript, whether it is that they're completely new to Atmosphere or they've already been offered a contract, what do you suggest they do next?
Um, if you're part of this webinar, that means you again get expedited consideration. Um, I know that if you are someone who's already submitted a manuscript, you and have received a contract, you can actually get a hold of me directly and set up a meeting, right, where we can chat about the book and what next steps are. If you've not submitted a manuscript, again, we have that link where you can get expedited consideration. It is a lovely time of year to start making your book reality. And so, you have the opportunity to submit or move forward with a contract. Again, if this is something that you considered, um, let's put it this way, you have the opportunity to be part of something that is really changing the industry of writing. And the way we're changing that industry of writing is by putting writers first. We are very interested in the ethics of making sure that writers keep those three critical things. And so, I always have a little bit of caution in using, a phrase like this, but what I'll say is it's a very, very good moment to be, and you can be part of them again with, the opportunity to move forward with an existing contract, or if you're ready to send us even just a piece of your manuscript, let's take a look.
Absolutely. So, we've just got one more question for you. Well, we have a lot of questions, but we have time for one more question with you. This person wants to know, what is one thing I can do as an author to encourage a smooth publishing process?
Tell you what, you asked for one, I'm going to give you three. Okay. My first thing I would say is this: come in with an open mind. Okay. Come in with an open mind and an expectation that you're going to get to keep that control, but you also are going to be working with professionals who are going to offer great insights, and you want to be open to those, especially because a lot of times those can make or break a book. Two, um, make sure you know your contract. That way you're going to feel safe and protected. Make sure it has the kinds of things we've talked about. Again, complete autonomy, complete rights. Make sure that you're keeping, your fair share of the proceeds. That way you've entered into a level partnership with the person, with the press that you're working with. And then thirdly, um, I would get excited. I know this sounds like maybe something for after the production process, but the enthusiasm that you reflect as the author is going to have an effect upon your publication process and the way that people engage with you during that. So I think that having a degree of excitement about this dream that's finally coming true for you is going to be something that is going to reverberate through the publication process in a way that is meaningful, because you're at the beginning of a journey that is very exciting.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. That is all the questions that we have time for today. But for anyone that has a question that wasn't answered, please do check out Atmosphere Press's YouTube channel, where we've got previous webinar sessions with Kyle. You can get more access to his wisdom and experiences there. But with that being said, thank you again so much to Dr. Kyle McCord for being here with us and sharing your experience, your time, your thoughts today. And thank you to everyone for being here with us and for giving us your thoughtful questions. If you're a writer looking for a rewarding and meaningful publishing experience, check out the links in the chat, which I'll put in there one more time for you. And be sure to visit us at atmospherepress.com. There you can sign up for our email newsletter, browse our new and forthcoming releases, meet the humans behind Atmosphere Press, check out our testimonials, and of course, submit your manuscript. Remember to mention this webinar in the first line of your cover letter, and we will expedite the review process for your submission. We look forward to staying in touch with all of you, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, have a great rest of your week, everyone.